and welcome back to Travel in Chinese. My name is Mark Rosewell, also known as Dash Shan. In our last lesson, we were at an antiques market, 旧货市场, in Beijing. These places are always popular with foreign tourists because you can buy a little piece of China's rich cultural history. Traditional Chinese clothing is also quite popular. You can buy styles of clothing that date from Imperial China in the 19th century or to the early 20th century period. Many designers take these traditional styles and blend them with more modern styles for a kind of East meets West, 中西结合 kind of style. Well, in today's lesson, Xue Mei is going to buy some traditional Chinese clothing. Let's see what she finds.
这个商场不错，东西挺全的。
而且这儿的服装挺适合外国人穿的，你可以常来逛逛。
我去过琉璃厂，我记得那儿的售货员都会说外语，有的还会好几门呢。买东西特别方便。
这儿也一样，售货员多少都会说点外语。
太好了，那我一定常来。
这里呀，中式服装的样式特别多。你看那件衣服怎么样？
我觉得这件领子有点高，穿着可能会不舒服。
这些都是中式服装的改良版。
改良版？
我给你举个例子。你知道中国的旗袍吗？
知道。旗袍原来是清代妇女的传统服装，
现在的旗袍已经和以前大不一样了，袖子、领子、肩、下摆都发生了变化。
啊，我明白了。其实随着人们生活的改变，服装的样式也会发生变化。
你说的太对了。不过不管怎么变，中式服装还是有自己的特点。
我觉得这件红色的挺漂亮的。
啊，这叫唐装，现在挺流行的。
您好，这件是100%的纯丝，您需要多大号的？我给您拿一件试试。
中国衣服的号我不太懂，您看着拿吧。
那您试试这件，我看差不多。
你还别说，大小还挺合适的。
这个衣服洗了以后会缩水吗？
您别担心，在做衣服以前，料子就下过水，都缩过水了。
我觉得还是买大一点的好。
那我再给您拿一件大的，您试试，你自己看看哪件好。
这件好，这个比那个穿着松快。
这件衣服还是穿大一号的好看。
多少钱
？320块。
给我来一件吧。
来，给您东西，慢走啊，想买东西再来。
谢谢。
不客气。
Okay, let's go back over the dialogue part by part. Today we follow Xue Mei and her cousin-in-law to a market with lots of Chinese-style clothing. 东西挺全的. 全 means whole or complete. It can be used as an adverb like totally or completely, or, as in this case, as an adjective. 东西挺全的 indicates that they have just about everything here. They have a complete selection. The clothing may be made in a Chinese style, but many of the customers are foreigners. 这里卖的东西都挺适合外国人穿. The things here are very suitable to be worn by foreigners. To serve the clientele better, many of the vendors here 多少都会说点外语, can speak some foreign languages. Here, 多少 indicates more or less to a certain extent. This can also be used to ask a question, as in how much, how many, 多少钱, how much money. We're going to review this pattern later on in the lesson today.
这个商场不错，东西挺全的。
而且这儿的服装挺适合外国人穿的，你可以常来逛逛。
我去过琉璃厂，我记得那儿的售货员都会说外语，有的还会好几门呢。买东西特别方便。
这儿也一样，售货员多少都会说点外语。
太好了，那我一定常来。
中式服装 is Chinese-style clothing. 中式快餐 Chinese-style fast food. 西式 would be Western style. 中式服装的样式挺多. There are many styles, 样式 of Chinese clothing. Much of the clothing sold here are 中式服装的改良版, improved versions of traditional Chinese-style clothing. For example, they might have modern-style buttons or shoulder pads that were not part of the traditional style, but the clothing still looks distinctly Chinese. 有自己的特点, to have their own distinctive features. For example, the 旗袍, now usually in English we just call this by its Chinese name, 旗袍. 旗袍原来是清代妇女的传统服装. The 旗袍 was originally a traditional gown worn by women in the Qing dynasty. That's the last dynasty of imperial China. But now many parts of the 旗袍 have undergone transformation, 发生了变化, or been altered, such as the 袖子, sleeves, 领子, collar, 肩, shoulders, 下摆, the lower hem.
这些都是中式服装的改良版。
改良版。
我给你举个例子，你知道中国的旗袍吗？
知道。旗袍原来是清代妇女的传统服装，
现在的旗袍已经和以前大不一样了，袖子、领子、肩、下摆都发生了变化。
啊，我明白了。其实随着人们生活的改变，服装的样式也会发生变化。
你说的太对了。不过不管怎么变，中式服装还是有自己的特点。
Another type of clothing is called 唐装，现在挺流行的。It's quite popular now. Remember, in a previous lesson, we learned that Chinatowns in the West are often called 唐人街. Well, Tang is another dynasty name in China, one of the greatest periods in Chinese history. So, Tang is often used simply to refer to something that is Chinese. 唐装, Chinese-style jacket. This style of clothing became extremely popular after the APEC meeting in Shanghai in 2001, when the leadership of all the APEC nations posed for a group photo wearing 唐装. This one is 100%的真丝, 100% pure silk. Percent in Chinese is literally described by 100% followed by a number, indicating how many out of 100 parts. 100%, 100 out of 100. In other words, 100%.
我觉得这件红色的挺漂亮的。
啊，这叫唐装，现在挺流行的。
您好，这件是100%的纯丝，您需要多大号的？我给您拿一件试试。
中国衣服的号我不太懂，您看着拿吧。
那您试试这件，我看差不多。
They try a larger size. 这个比那个穿着松快。松快 is to be relieved, to feel better, to be less crowded. The larger size feels more comfortable. 这件衣服还是穿大一号的好看。This clothing looks better when you wear one size too big. 穿大一号 wear one size larger.
我觉得还是买大一点的好。
那我再给您拿一件大的，您试试，你自己看看哪件好。
Welcome now to our little tea house where we discuss some of the background issues that we come across in the dialogues. You know, there are several common styles of Chinese dress that have made a comeback in recent years. Many of these have been modernized while still retaining some of the traditional flavor. Today we heard about 旗袍, often just called 旗袍 in English, or sometimes known by the Cantonese word 穷衫. In Mandarin we would say 长衫, long gown. Now this style of dress actually comes from the Manchu nationality. The rulers of the last dynasty, the Qing, were Manchus. So nobility often wore Manchu-style clothing. The qipao is a one-piece dress with a high neck. It's usually fairly tight-fitting with a slit up one or both sides. Of course, there are many variations, but this is a very elegant, feminine gown. Another style we heard about today was the tangzhuang. It's a little bit like the zhongshanzhuang, a Chinese tunic suit, often referred to in English as a Mao suit. Zhongshanzhuang refers to Sun Yat-sen, in Chinese Sun Zhongshan, who founded the Republic of China in 1911. In the West, this suit is perhaps called the Mao suit because it became the most popular form of dress after the founding of the People's Republic of China in 1949. But the tangzhuang is slightly different. Tangzhuang are usually made with silk and have traditional Chinese patterns. They're much more fancy and stylish than the plain zhongshanzhuang. Again, there are many variations on this style. I'd like to spend a little time now talking about a specific language point that came up in today's dialogue. 随着 following, as in following the development or after some sort of process has occurred. 随着互联网的发展，人们之间的联系更方便了。Following the development of the internet, it's much more convenient now for people to contact each other. 随着互联网的发展，人们之间的联系更方便了。Here's another example. 随着收入的增长，买汽车的人也越来越多。As people's income increases, more and more people are buying cars. 随着收入的增长，买汽车的人也越来越多。Okay, let's go back to the dialogue and see how they used 随着。
现在的旗袍已经和以前大不一样了，袖子、领子、肩、下摆都发生了变化。
啊，我明白了。其实，随着人们生活的改变，服装的样式也会发生变化。
你说的太对了。不过不管怎么变，中式服装还是有自己的特点。
Now let's look at some of the grammatical patterns in today's dialogue and do substitution exercises. 多少 something 点儿。This indicates that no matter how much there is, at least there's a minimum amount. For example, 这件事情我多少知道点儿。At least I know a little bit about this thing. 这件事情我多少知道点儿。Okay, let's try some substitutions now using 多少 something 点儿。
北京的历史我多少了解一点儿。
北京的历史我多少了解一点。
虽然我做的饭不太好吃，你还是多少吃一点儿吧。
虽然我做的饭不太好吃，你还是多少吃一点吧。
Here's a colloquial expression that's quite useful. 你看着 something 吧。看着 usually is followed by a verb. 你看着 something 吧。That means you decide. It's up to you. For example, 我什么都能吃，你看着点吧。I can eat anything. You pick what you'd like. You pick whatever you'd choose. 我什么都能吃，你看着点吧。Okay, let's go and do some substitutions now with 你看着 something 吧。
这件事情你就看着办吧。
这件事情你就看着办吧。
给朋友的礼物你就看着买吧。
给朋友的礼物你就看着买吧。
唐装 is a style of Chinese jacket. Lots of traditional Chinese clothing is made with 100% 真丝, 100% pure silk. Well, we've been doing a lot of shopping lately. In our next episode, we're going to be doing some more sightseeing. We'll see you then. 再见.